On May 10, 2020, Suzanne Morphew, 49, a mother of two, disappeared without a trace from her home near Salida, Colorado. That same day, law enforcement officers across the country launched a search operation. Unexpected events during the search raised suspicions that not everything was as it initially seemed. Suzanne was born on April 11, 1971, into the family of Jean and Adrian in Alexandria. She grew up with her sister and two brothers. Everyone who knew Suzanne described her as an outstanding, intelligent, and caring person. While in high school, she met her future husband, Barry Morphew, a promising baseball player. Barry was even invited by the Toronto Blue Jays, but he soon suffered a serious injury that prevented him from playing in the major leagues. After graduating from high school, they both attended Purdue University and married in 1994. After their marriage, Barry started a landscaping design business, and Suzanne taught at a secondary school. When their two daughters were born, Suzanne quit her job and devoted all her time to raising them. When their oldest daughter graduated from high school and went to college, the family decided to move to a house near Salida, Colorado, to be closer to her. At the same time, however, rumors circulated that Suzanne and Barry had a strained relationship. On May 10, 2020, Suzanne and Barry's daughters, who were returning from a camping trip, sent their mother a short text message wishing her a happy Mother's Day. But Suzanne did not respond. They thought this was odd, as Suzanne had always been very active on social media. The girls also tried to contact her by phone but were unsuccessful. The eldest daughter, Mallory, told her father that they could not contact their mother and were very nervous. Barry told the girls that he was not at home because he had left for Broomfield early that morning on business, leaving Suzanne asleep. Barry called one of his neighbors and asked him to check on Suzanne and see if her mountain bike was there, but the neighbor could not find Suzanne or the bike. After that, Barry asked him to call the police. The police soon arrived and began searching for Suzanne around the house. They soon found Suzanne's bicycle near the house. Suzanne had just started mountain biking, so the possibility of an accident was also considered. However, since investigators could not find Suzanne near the bike, they considered the possibility that the incident had been planned by someone else. A few days after Suzanne's disappearance, her bicycle helmet was found about a mile from her home near Highway 50. The investigation suggested that everything pointed to Suzanne's abduction. Immediately after this theory emerged, her husband, Barry Morphew, released a video message desperately stating that he would do everything to bring Suzanne home. Barry also had his own version of Suzanne's disappearance. He discussed this version with YouTube blogger Tyson Draper when they accidentally met at the site where police found Suzanne's bike. Tyson secretly filmed the conversation with Barry. In the video, Barry claimed that on the first night, a mountain lion was seen in the area where Suzanne's bike was found. According to him, police officers saw the animal run past their car. Therefore, investigators initially assumed that Suzanne could have been attacked by a mountain lion. However, law enforcement authorities believed that if it had indeed been a mountain lion attack, there would have been signs of a struggle or blood at the scene. Therefore, this theory was soon ruled out. Investigators believed that Suzanne had never left the house for a bike ride. Their suspicions were especially heightened after Suzanne's sunglasses and a backpack with a water reservoir were found in her car. Investigators also found her driver's license and credit cards in her Range Rover, but her cell phone was nowhere to be found. During the investigation, Suzanne's sister, Melinda, told law enforcement that Suzanne had sent her a short text message 2 days before she disappeared, stating that Barry was abusing her emotionally and physically. Melinda said Barry was very dominant in his relationship with his wife and had a strong tendency to use pressure and intimidation to achieve his own goals. Barry kept repeating the same story, that he had gone to Broomfield early in the morning on May 10th for business and had left Suzanne asleep. When investigators began checking Barry's alibi, the investigation suddenly took a different direction. While searching the apartment, law enforcement officers discovered a so-called spy pen that had recorded an intimate conversation between Suzanne and a man named Jeff. Investigators began to determine who Suzanne's lover, Jeff, was and whether he had any connection to her disappearance. Finding Suzanne's secret lover, Jeff, was not easy for investigators. Suzanne was so skillful at hiding her secret relationship that it took investigators 6 months to identify her mystery lover. As it turned out, Suzanne's mystery lover was Jeff Libler, who had a wife and 6 children in Michigan. During her high school years, Suzanne and Jeff were in love, but later broke up. Years later, after Suzanne and Barry moved to Colorado in 2018, she contacted Jeff via Facebook, and their communication became a daily routine. After Suzanne's disappearance, Jeff stayed silent for months. He only began cooperating with the investigation after investigators identified him. As it turned out, Jeff did everything he could to hide their nearly 2-year affair. First, he deleted all social media accounts he had used to communicate with Suzanne. He told investigators that he only took these steps to protect his family and career. He also did not want to damage Suzanne's reputation and was afraid the investigation would consider him a suspect. He also agreed to provide investigators with samples of his DNA, phone records, and deleted account data. By checking iCloud and phone records, investigators were able to restore details of their relationship, including times when Suzanne and Jeff met in person. It was also discovered that Suzanne had traveled to different states several times to meet Jeff. Investigators found that the couple exchanged photos, discussed getting married, and even considered leaving the country. Their conversations even included discussions about moving to Ecuador. Suzanne and Jeff's relationship became key evidence in the investigation into Suzanne's disappearance, as law enforcement tried to determine what happened on May 9th, the day before Mother's Day. They learned that Suzanne and Jeff had exchanged 59 messages that day. At 5 p.m., Suzanne texted Jeff, "I'm in love with you. What are you doing?" Jeff replied at 6 o'clock. Suzanne told him she would contact him on WhatsApp later. At 11 p.m., she texted, "Okay, I'm here." At 2:26 a.m., Suzanne received a text from Barry saying he was coming home. No one knows if Suzanne read this message, as she didn't respond. Perhaps she was busy chatting with Jeff at the time. Barry later sent another message, but Suzanne did not respond to it either. Investigators assumed Barry was already home at the time of the last message. They noticed Barry's cell phone moving around the house, suggesting he may have been secretly spying on Suzanne. When investigators asked Barry to explain this unusual phone activity, he replied that chipmunks were a constant problem in his house and that he had been chasing and shooting them around the house to kill them that day. It was this admission that he was shooting chipmunks that became key evidence against him, as there was no proof that chipmunks had actually been shot in the area around the house. While Barry Morphew became a suspect, Jeff Libler was cleared of all suspicion. He told investigators that he was in Michigan at the time of Suzanne's disappearance, and his alibi was confirmed. When investigators provided information about Barry, Suzanne, and Jeff, he denied knowing anything about their relationship. But there was one question. If Barry knew nothing about Suzanne's affair, what would motivate him to kill her? One crucial piece of evidence in the investigation was a deleted message that investigators found on Barry's cell phone. He had sent this message to Suzanne a few days before her disappearance. The message read, "I'm done. I don't care what you've been doing all these years. We just need to resolve this issue in a civilized manner." The investigation believed that Barry knew his daughters would be camping on Saturday night and that he could have killed Susan and covered up evidence. From 2:47 a.m. to 10:17 a.m. for nearly 8 hours, Barry's phone was in airplane mode. The investigation thought that during this time, when his phone was in airplane mode, he was destroying possible evidence. Since it was impossible to monitor Barry's cell phone, investigators decided to use a relatively new method, digital vehicle forensics, to extract data from Barry's Ford truck. Barry's story about the truck was radically different from the version he told investigators. Investigators began deciphering data from Barry's Ford truck to determine his driving route after his cell phone was put into airplane mode. The investigation believed that Barry killed Suzanne the same day in the afternoon. He told federal agents that he went to bed around 8 p.m. that night. However, the truck's data showed that the vehicle started around 9:30 a.m. and drove 96 feet closer to the house. Investigators believed that this was when Barry placed Suzanne's body in the truck. Barry initially told police that he set his alarm for 4:30 a.m. on Mother's Day and left the house at 5 o'clock a.m. to go to work in Broomfield. However, data from the truck's computer system showed that the vehicle's doors opened and closed several times at 4:30 a.m. Investigators believe Barry began traveling toward Broomfield much earlier than he claimed. In addition, there was a 4-hour period from approximately 4 o'clock a.m. to 8 o'clock a.m., during which no activity was recorded in the truck's computer system. Although the truck's data did not give the investigation a complete picture, investigators suspected that it was during this 4-hour period that Barry hid Susan's body. However, Barry partially supplemented this data with his own narrative. He told investigators that as he left the house, he turned left instead of right because he saw a deer. He was a hunter, so he decided to change direction to get a closer look at the deer. This statement proved crucial to the investigation, as it was in this area that one of the most important pieces of evidence, Susan's bicycle helmet, was found. Therefore, investigators hypothesized that when Barry turned left instead of right, he may have discarded the helmet. At 8:10 a.m., the truck's computer system updated recording data. At the same time, his cell phone also turned on. Investigators were able to track the movement of the truck and Barry's cell phone. The record showed that he first stopped at the Broomfield bus stop, where he threw something into a trash can. He then stopped at a trash can near the hotel and threw something there, then at a trash can near McDonald's, a trash can in the teen parking lot, and finally returned to the hotel trash can. Investigators believed that Barry was trying to destroy evidence in different locations. They found surveillance footage of him near one of the trash cans, but the camera couldn't capture exactly what he was throwing. It all seemed suspicious, but Barry insisted that he always had a lot of junk in his car and was simply getting rid of it. The investigation found that on May 10th, after returning from work, Barry went to his room at the Holiday Inn, where he stayed until 6:03 p.m. Investigators discovered that Barry had been speaking with his daughter, Mallory, who told him that she had no way to contact her mother. After that conversation, Barry asked a neighbor to check whether Suzanne was home and if her bicycle was still there. When it became clear that Suzanne was missing and her bicycle was nowhere to be found, Barry asked the neighbor to call the police. However, he did not immediately return home. He later explained to law enforcement that he first needed to distribute work tools, including shovels, to his employees. It wasn't until police officially reported Suzanne missing, Barry informed his staff about a family emergency. Additionally, Barry rented a hotel room for one of his employees before heading home. Investigators interviewed the employee, who stated that there was a strong chemical smell in Barry's room, possibly chlorine or bleach. Authorities suspected that Barry had used these substances to cover up evidence of a crime. Barry left for home after 6 p.m., and on the way, he spoke with a sheriff's deputy who informed him that Suzanne's bicycle had been found. Barry arrived at the scene of the discovery at approximately 8:40 p.m. Investigators noted that he appeared very nervous for several minutes. Initially, Barry offered a $100,000 reward for information about Suzanne's whereabouts, but he later increased the amount to $200,000. During the investigation, authorities discovered several messages Susan had sent to her friend. The content of these messages indicated that Susan was very afraid of Barry. She wrote to her friend that Barry refused to talk about the divorce and that she was afraid to be alone with him because she did not feel safe. Based on this information, Barry became the primary suspect in the investigation. Investigators immediately arrived at Barry's home to conduct a search. While searching his home, vehicles, and trucks, the forensic team found a clear plastic cap in a clothes dryer. According to law enforcement, the cap was part of a needle used with a tranquilizer gun. Although no tranquilizer gun was found at the home, Barry told investigators he was an experienced marksman and knew how to use tranquilizers effectively. He also claimed to have prepared the paralysis-inducing tranquilizer himself, using this illegal method to tranquilize deer, then cut off their antlers and sell them. Based on the tranquilizer cap and Barry's testimony, investigators speculated that on May 9th, after returning home, Barry used the tranquilizer to put Susan to sleep and then killed her. According to experts, once injected with such a needle, an animal the size of a deer becomes fully paralyzed within 4 to 20 minutes. Investigators believe that Barry's movement of his phone around the house indicated he was chasing Susan after injecting her with the tranquilizer. Barry also had obvious scratches on his left arm, further raising suspicions. Investigators concluded that Barry and Susan had a conflict that day, after which Barry killed her. They analyzed Barry's suspicious behavior, the unusual data from the truck, Susan's disturbing messages, and the fact that Barry had disposed of trash in 5 different locations. These facts were handed over to the district prosecutor. Almost a year after Suzanne's disappearance, in May 2021, Barry Morphew was arrested. Although Suzanne's body was never found, the prosecutor's office officially declared her dead. Despite the lack of corpse-based evidence, Barry was charged with first-degree murder and evidence falsification. He was taken into custody without bail. However, Barry adamantly denied killing his wife. According to the prosecution's version, Barry could not accept the fact that Susan wanted to break up with him. So he sedated her, as he did when hunting animals, then killed her and hid the body. To defend himself, Barry hired prominent lawyers from Denver. In the summer of 2021, Judge Patrick Murphy began discussing evidence publicly. Contrary to the prosecution's evidence, the defense argued that the clear plastic lid found in the clothes dryer was not sufficient because no one could determine how long it had been there. Additionally, Barry's DNA was not found on the lid. As for the chlorine odor in the Holiday Inn room, a manager told investigators that this odor could be smelled before Barry arrived because the room was above a swimming pool. The prosecution faced another significant difficulty: DNA evidence discovered by forensic scientists that cast complete doubt on Barry Morphew's guilt. Forensic scientists found the DNA of a man in the passenger compartment of Susan's car. However, this DNA did not belong to Barry Morphew, nor did the DNA match that of Susan's lover, Jeff Liebler, but it was a perfect match to DNA from an unknown man linked to 3 unsolved sexual assault cases in Tempe, Phoenix, and Chicago. The question arose: was Suzanne another victim of a serial rapist. Judge Patrick Murphy reviewed the evidence to determine if there was sufficient evidence to convict Barry Morphew of murder. The judge considered three possible theories. The first theory was that Suzanne Morphew left home voluntarily. The second was that Barry Morphew killed his wife. The third theory was that Suzanne Morphew was kidnapped and killed by an unknown man suspected of sexually assaulting her in Tempe, Phoenix, and Chicago. The judge said it was unlikely Suzanne would have left of her own will, even though she and her lover Jeff Liebler were considering moving to Ecuador. The evidence in court showed how much Suzanne loved her children, so Judge Murphy believed she would never take such a step. However, disproving the kidnapping theory proved difficult, especially after mysterious DNA was found inside Suzanne Morphew's Range Rover. Judge Murphy also expressed doubts about the credibility of the evidence presented by the prosecution against Barry Morphew. He stated that the evidence was not conclusive, nor was the suggestion that Barry Morphew committed first-degree murder, a claim he felt was not convincing. Despite this, however, the judge concluded that there was sufficient evidence to warrant a trial. He set bail for Barry Morphew at $5,000, which could only be paid in cash. In addition, an ankle bracelet was placed on Barry Morphew to monitor his movements and prevent him from leaving Chaffee County. On September 20th, 2021, Barry Morphew was released. He left the building accompanied by his children, Mallory and Macy. His daughters supported him throughout this time and believed in their father's innocence. Barry Morphew's next trial was scheduled to begin on April 28, 2022, but a few months earlier, Judge Patrick Murphy recused himself. Judge Ramsey Lama was appointed to replace him. Meanwhile, Barry Morphew's defense, led by attorney Iris Eaton, filed a motion with the court seeking sanctions against the prosecutors. The motion argued that the prosecution failed to present important evidence in a timely manner, including several potentially exculpatory facts, such as DNA from an unknown male found in Suzanne Morphew's Range Rover. In April 22, Judge Lama found that prosecutors had repeatedly violated deadlines and failed to provide important information during the investigation. While the judge did not find these actions to be intentional misconduct, it was clear to the court that they underscored incompetence and carelessness in the investigation, which in some cases even amounted to negligence. The judge therefore rejected the testimony of 14 prosecution witnesses, including DNA experts and digital evidence specialists who had examined data from cell phones and vehicles. These witnesses were also barred from testifying at the trial. On April 19, 2022, Chaffee County District Attorney Linda Stanley filed a motion with the court to dismiss the murder charges against Barry Morphew indefinitely, meaning the case could be reopened at a later date depending on the circumstances. In the motion, the prosecutor stated that the court's decision to dismiss the testimony of several key witnesses complicated the investigation. In addition, the victim's body had not been found, and she said the prosecution would not be able to fairly investigate the case. Prosecutor Stanley told the judge that the investigation believed it was close to locating Suzanne Morphew's body. Court documents indicated that the investigation had been focused on a mountainous area near Barry Morphew's family home, where a search operation to locate the body would begin as soon as the snow melted. After considering the prosecutor's motion, the judge ruled to acquit Barry Morphew of the murder charge and removed him from the courtroom. On September 22, 2023, law enforcement officials discovered several burials in the town of Moffett, Colorado. Based on dental records and blood tests, it was determined that one of the bodies found in the burials was Suzanne Morphew. The burial site was located approximately 50 miles from the village where she had been sought, in a mountainous area bordering the home of Barry Morphew. Shortly thereafter, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation released an official statement classifying Suzanne Morphew's death as a homicide. The statement said that her death was caused by an unspecified substance that was likely injected into her body as a result of a tranquilizer gunshot. The discovery of Suzanne's remains and new details have raised questions in the community. Everyone wondered if the investigation would still consider Barry Morphew the prime suspect in the murder. According to the investigation report, Barry Morphew's truck was not in Moffett on May 9th and 10th, 2020. However, there are rumors in the community that Barry may have asked someone to help him hide Suzanne's body. At this point, Barry Morphew is not officially a suspect, although police and the district attorney's office have no intention of closing the case. The district attorney told the media that the investigation is still ongoing and he will not be able to comment until more information is received. Barry Morphew's attorneys, Iris Eaton and Ian Bruce, have argued from the beginning of the investigation that Suzanne could have been one of the serial killer's victims. They claim that law enforcement officials wrongly accused Barry Morphew and hope that the investigation will finally admit its mistake. In the meantime, Barry Morphew has filed a lawsuit against the prosecutor's office, the sheriff's office, and several individuals involved in the investigation, demanding $15 million in moral damages.